Let me ask you a question, folks. What were you listening to musically when you were 12 or 13? Do you even remember what you were doing when you were 12 or 13? Well, this is an interesting question posed by my friend Mike over at MGK Boston. I'm going to try to answer that today, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to Northern Revolutions. I'm Rob. Welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new. As I mentioned off the top, we're talking about what we were listening to when we were 12 or 13. If you haven't already seen it, my good friend Mike, MGK Boston, started a thread a couple weeks ago asking what were we listening to when we were 12 or 13 years old. Took me a little bit of time to think about this because I wasn't really into music when I was 12 or 13. I did a video, and I think it might have been the very first video that I did almost 2.5 years ago that I called my record journey. And it sort of talked about some of the first records that I ever got into or that were meaningful to me. I'll leave a link to that in the description and MGK Boston's video that started this thread. When I think about it, 1992, 1993 was when I was 12 or 13. And I didn't really get into music till about a year or two after that. 94, 95 was when the music bug bit me. That was right around the time of the Beatles anthology, and that was kind of the spark that lit the fire for me. So when I was 12 or 13, I wasn't listening to very much. I didn't really own any albums to speak of. Music just wasn't a thing for me. Music was kind of ever present in my household because my dad, he's the one I blame for all of this. He was the original, record guy that I knew. And so he was always listening to music. And so I heard a lot through osmosis, but I didn't really get my own personal interest in music till I was about 14 or 15. But I have managed to find 5 albums that I did listen to with some frequency when I was 12 or 13. So we're going to talk about those today. So the first thing that I ever remember consciously listening to, going to Dad's records and pulling it and putting it on and listening to it, was this compilation, Elvis. I mean, I remember before I discovered the Beatles, Elvis is the king. No one will ever be better than Elvis. And then I heard the Beatles. But this is kind of like it's a compilation. It's, I guess, career spanning. It starts with Hound Dog and goes through all the way through the sort of the diamond-studded jumpsuit phase. And I listened to this with some regularity, just because it had a lot of the big hits on it. I liked early Elvis back then. I thought diamond-studded jumpsuit Elvis was lame. Now I think he's cool as shit. Maybe because I'm old. I don't know. But I remember listening to this a lot. And this is actually my dad's copy that I still have today. I haven't played it in eons because I have other Elvis records that I play. But because this was probably the first record I ever spun in my entire life, obviously I still have it. The rest of these I've got on CD, and they're the original CDs that I used back in the day. Because, we're talking very early 90s. So these were not available on vinyl. Vinyl had its probably lowest point, right? So I got to show some CDs. But along with Elvis, the other one that really captivated me early on was the Beach Boys. My dad had several Beach Boys records, which again, I still have original 60s first pressings, but I gravitated to this. This is it's just called Made in the USA, and I guess it's a greatest hits compilation that came out in 1986. And I mean, this covers everything, and I listened to this relentlessly, all the time. I liked, 12-year-old me didn't appreciate some of the stuff like, God Only Knows, which I now think is one of the greatest songs ever written. But I liked the early surfing stuff, Surfing Safari, Surfing USA, Dance, 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 I Get Around, that really early, California beach bum kind of stuff. I didn't appreciate, the sophistication of Brian's harmonies and stuff, but I just thought they were sort of catchy oldies, pop rock kind of stuff. So this got a massive amount of play when I was 12 or 13 years old. One of the first CDs I ever bought, and for a young boy that was not really a music fan, this may seem like an odd selection. The Downchild Blues Band. This is like a 2 CD in one kind of deal. So this has their album Dancing and the other one Road Fever. Both of you can see sort of the covers on there. This is autographed by the band, and I'll get to that in a second. This compilation came out in '92 when I bought this. I don't know how known the Downchild Blues Band are outside of Canada, but here's the thing. One of my favorite movies growing up, and thanks to my dad, was The Blues Brothers. Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi. Love that movie. Dan Aykroyd is from Kingston, Ontario, and still lives there, actually. And he was influenced a lot by the Downchild Blues Band, Donnie Walsh. They played in the Toronto bar scene, they played across Canada. And these guys were the inspiration for Dan Aykroyd to create the Blues Brothers. And I loved the Blues Brothers movie. Well, I've seen it hundreds of times, especially when I was younger. But back in the early 90s, in the city that I live in, we have a Rib Fest in the summer. It travels around to all the local cities. And it was in the end of August every year. I think the last week of August. And every year there's a big band, not a big band, there's a band that was, the entertainer for the weekend. And for a couple of years running, it was the Downchild Blues Band. And I love ribs, so I always go to Rib Fest. And I would always make sure that I was there to see one of the sets by the Downchild Blues Band, and met Donnie Walsh and got everyone in the band to sign this CD. So if you know what the Blues Brothers are, this is what the Downchild Blues Band is. And they're still going strong today. So yeah, as a 12-year-old that knew nothing about music, maybe I was 14 at the time, but right in that area, I listened to this and saw these guys live, which is kind of strange when I knew nothing else about music. I hadn't even discovered the Beatles yet. So, Downchild Blues Band. The first CD that I ever bought in my life was from 1992, Eric Clapton's MTV Unplugged. Didn't know anything about Clapton. I knew who Clapton was, and I had heard his music a lot because my dad was a big Clapton fan. So I had heard Layla, and I had heard stuff he did with Delaney and Bonnie, but I didn't care because I just wasn't into it. But I remember this, I think, was one of the first MTV Unplugged specials. I remember Dad watching it, and I just happened to be in the room, and I was just kind of, what's this? This is really good. And so I bought this. This was the first CD that I ever bought. And I thought, yeah, I'm cool. I own a Clapton album now. Who gives a crap? But, 12-year-old me or 13-year-old me thought that was something, because, none of my friends at that point in time were listening to Eric Clapton. But, yeah, I still like this today. I have the anniversary edition on vinyl, and I haven't listened to the CD in ever because I listened to the vinyl one. But I loved the concept of an Unplugged. I thought that was kind of neat. I did a damn good job of it, despite the fact that Clapton is a wanker. The first CD that I ever purchased. And this came out in 92, so I would have been 13 or 14, something like that. So, and lastly, this is an album that came out in 93, but I had it on cassette. I did have a few cassettes. I can't remember what many of them were, to be quite honest. But this is interesting. This is a band called Moxy Früvous. Most people will go, nah, I don't know who they are. That's right, you won't. Moxy Früvous was a band from Toronto. They were, let's call it pop rock a cappella, or, yeah, I guess that's the best way to describe it. All 4-part vocal harmonies, very sort of like modern doo-wop almost, but with full backing instrumentation. Quite interesting. I bought this, again, I was 13, I think. And they had a big hit off of this, actually. It was a video that got played all the time on Much Music called The King of Spain. And most of their songs are kind of whimsical, nonsensical. Some of them are social comments. It's not music to be taken seriously, in my mind. But it was fun. And because I liked The King of Spain, I bought the cassette and have since purchased the CD for like $2 just for pure nostalgia's sake. Interesting fact, this individual right here is Jian Ghomeshi. Jian Ghomeshi would go on to be probably the most famous radio broadcaster in Canada in the last 30 years. He hosted an incredible show on the CBC, on CBC Radio, that they also streamed on YouTube, called Q with Jian Ghomeshi, where he would interview musicians. Incredible interviewer. His career was ruined because he was legally charged with like sexual assault, something of that nature. Ultimately, he was proven not guilty, but it destroyed his career. I'm not giving a comment either way. I'm not interested in the politics of that, and I don't take sides. But if the court says he didn't do it, then I guess I got to say that he didn't do it. I don't have an opinion. His personal life aside, it's a shame because he was an incredible musicologist and a great radio personality. His show still is running on the CBC now, hosted by a guy named Tom Power, who's a musician from Eastern Canada, and arguably does an equally good job. But side note, I guess this would have been the second album I ever bought, was Moxy Früvous, Bargainville. There you go, Mike. There is 5 artists that I listened to when I was 12, 13, 14, somewhere around that area. Just on the cusp, like 6 months to a year before music went poof for me. And I dove headlong into the Beatles and the band and Creedence and Fleetwood Mac and everything else that now means the world to me. So this was just, before I dove into the pool, I guess I was just dabbing my toe in it. So hopefully you found that interesting, folks. Check out Mike and MGK Boston. Several other of my friends have done this video. I saw Brian over at Embryonic Robot did it, and some others. So let me know in the comments what was some of the stuff that was of interest to a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old you. That's everything for me today, everybody. Catch you on the flip side.